Hello, everyone. Welcome back. For those of you I haven't yet met, I'm Enda, COO and co-founder here at Sequence. I'm very excited to have you all here at our first annual summit, which, based on the initial feedback, I think will definitely make an annual recurring theme because it's really exciting to see a room full of the smartest people in finance and RevOps from the leading AI and SaaS companies here in one room. So really excited. The next panel is a topic we think a lot about at Sequence. A lot of the companies that we work with, there's typically two main scaling motions that we see. You start PLG, you gradually move up market in enterprise sales-led deals, or you're sales-led from day one. And as you scale, you start to layer in a self-serve PLG motion. What a lot of teams underestimate is the operational complexity of actually managing those pricing motions in tandem. Not only in terms of actually managing the upgrade process when a team moves from being entirely self-serve to sales-led, but in terms of the actual revenue tooling that you need to scale a PLG motion versus a sales-led motion. A good example of this is, over 50% of our revenue here at Sequence actually comes from Stripe billing migrations, because it's an easy starting point for a lot of PLG teams who use Stripe as a payments gateway. They add on Stripe billing. It works well in the PLG space, and we have a ton of admiration for Stripe as a payments gateway and as a PLG platform. But as teams move up market, as they move into sales-led deals, they quickly break the limitations of what something like Stripe billing can do. And it's the same for other legacy tools like ChargeBee, Maxio, who are built for more of the V1 subscription SaaS era. This is where I think we're really excited at Sequence to be able to work with a lot of companies who have dual pricing motions, and I'm very pumped to welcome 4 panelists who have experience scaling both pricing motions. And we're going to hear from teams who have started PLG and gone up market into the sales-led world. And on the flip side, teams who are currently fully sales-led, preparing for the shift to PLG. So with that, would love to welcome up our 4 panelists and jump straight into the discussion.
So welcome, panel. I'd like to start with you, Tuche. Perhaps you can introduce yourself, give yourself a quick background. But I know that at A16Z, where we work together, you've helped many companies implement usage-based pricing models. How do you approach that? What's your framework for helping them choose the right metric, especially when, the value of APIs doesn't necessarily correlate to customer value?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I'm Tuche Artan. I'm the pricing packaging partner at the Growth Fund at A16Z. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this. This must be the first thing that you talk about when you're talking about pricing. When I talk to my portfolio companies, I generally start with okay, how is your pricing metric doing? Because that is the hardest thing to change, and it's the hardest thing to find, but it is taken as a granted. People are oh, I'll do this, XYZ. Definitely one of the toughest things to think about when you are figuring out your pricing. And with that in mind, the next thing I'm going to say is a little bit more disappointing because I don't have a magic wand or a North Star metric in any shape or form that will just give you this should be your pricing metric. But I do think about 3 things. The first thing is it really needs to align to your customer value. The second thing is it needs to be tangible. And the third thing is unless you're a nonprofit, you really should think about your costs. And it pains me to say that as a pricing person, but that is extremely important. I can also elaborate a little bit more on each of those if you want me to, Joe.
Please.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So customer value. I cannot emphasize how important this is. When you are paying for something, you really want to be thinking, oh, this is how I'm getting value out of this. So it makes sense for me to pay it in this way. So you want your customers to feel that. You don't want them to feel confused. I recently heard someone say, when you confuse your customers, you make them sad. So you don't want to make them sad. So it needs to be aligning to the value, and that value alignment to the metric will give you clarity, it will create a sense of fairness, and it will also build that trust that you really want. So we said the second thing is you need to make it tangible. So this is, again, your pricing metric needs to be concrete, understandable. Let's take OpenAI. They charge by tokens, and tokens before OpenAI came along, tokens were something that we use at arcades. So it didn't really, like, when they came up with it, like, it didn't really have an intrinsic value that we understood, but they went ahead and explained that to us really well. And now, like, when I say tokens, you guys, like, everyone has something tangible, somewhat tangible understanding of that. So that is a very good metric at this point. So again, the reason why it needs to be concrete and understandable is because you want your customers to measure, track, predict, and plan their costs. So that is directly correlated with the metric. And then we said the third thing as cost. So that one, again, we are in the age of AI. Things are expensive and you want to be margin positive. And I'm by no means, please do not leave this place saying, like, she said we need to, like, look at our costs and the cost-based pricing. No, 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 that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, just make sure that your pricing metric will help you cover your costs, will, like, somewhat align when you are selling it. You're not going to be thinking, oh my god, I'm going to lose money on this. So those would be my, like, three things. Sorry, no North Star, but
So not only sell things that people want, but sell them for more than it costs to make it, right?
just saying, definitely.
Unless you're a nonprofit, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tuche. Connor, you've recently made a move from, I believe, investor to operator at 11x, which is an agentic platform for digital workers, I think first in sales. Love to hear a little bit about you and that move. But also, really, you're in an interesting spot because the product that you offer can be either a replacement for a human worker or it can be a productivity enhancer for a human worker. So how do you think about pricing there, especially when your competition might actually be a human?
Yeah. So, well, I guess right now I just learned that we should sell things for more than they're worth. So that's really good. So yeah, I mean, I guess just 30 seconds on 11x. So we sell, go to market digital workers. So, the first product is Alice, which is an AI SDR, and it basically automates the entire SDR pipeline from discovery to research, to enrichment to delivery, to eventually converting that delivery into meetings, essentially. So most people, when they evaluate 11x, they are not just looking at us against a software platform. They're looking at us versus, do we hire a new BDR or a new SDR? Do we take our existing team and put them onto new territories, right? So that actually produces like this really interesting challenge when we price. And our philosophy there, just really simply, is we price on capacity and we deliver value on outcomes, right? So it's sort of like the push and pull. And depending on how people use the product, because there's so many ways we can surface value, we are just constantly trying to think about a couple ways to surface that to clients, right? So how much time are you saving using AI to reach data? How many more leads can you reach out to? How many more meetings or pipeline can you produce? So we're just trying to constantly surface that to clients and make that ROI and outcome-based proposition just like very, very clear to customers. So that's like the general framework we use, but we're not quite outcome-based pricing today. It's more like package of credits, so capacity. But we're just like constantly focused on that. It's something we talk about a lot.
So do you mind if I ask a follow-up question? Like, did you make a conscious decision not to price relative to replacing a BDR?
Yes. And there's a sort of a couple things. We price based on the comparison to a human. And we come in below that, obviously. But one thing that's sort of interesting in this discussion is that as we talk to more and more CFOs, especially as you move up market and into enterprise, we've found that a lot of CFOs actually really value that predictability in the platform, and the cost benefit, the ROI, like flexes up and down, sort of depending, right? When you think about our product, there's so many different inputs, and there's a little bit of seasonality too, especially in sales. So it's really difficult to price like on a pure like meter based. And most people, especially as move up market, just don't want that. Like they don't want another AWS bill, right? They want some predictability, and then the value prop is on us to deliver.
I'm just curious though, you say that you come in lower than the cost of a human. Like, have you had any discussions internally about the day when an agent is going to be far superior to a human and is much more productive? How would you think about pricing in that case?
I would argue that the day has come. On 11x, great product.
Salespeople are quaking in their shoes.
Yeah, no, I know. I just think it's really hard, right? I think when you think about outcome-based pricing, it works really, really well when the unit is defined and measurable. So I think Intercom does this really well with Fin, right? So you have this Fin is Intercom CS product. So you have like a defined unit of time. You have a call, and at the end of it, it's a very binary outcome. Either the call was resolved or it's not resolved. For a CFO or for someone making that buying decision, it's super easy to actually value like what a resolved call is worth in that case. For us, like when you think about what makes a great BDR or SDR, human SDR or BDR, like the way that person produces value is like so much more multidimensional than just like that binary, like resolved or not resolved, right? So it's really difficult to actually price that in a way that's compelling. Like I said, we go back to just like capacity. So we do price like a human. It's just like how many leads can this person reach out to in a month? And when you compare that versus what a human can do, obviously the AI is going to win every single time. And then it's on us to basically just show that down and down the funnel.
Right. Awesome. So look, at Drivetrain, you serve many of the agentic and AI companies. Love to hear a little bit about what you do. And then also, love to get your views on some of the challenges with scaling consumption-based pricing and also the move towards outcome-based pricing.
In terms of Drivetrain, we are an AI native FP&A platform. So on our platform, CFOs and CROs or RevOps teams more specifically, they bring all their business applications data, create a single source of truth, do all their modeling, whether it is cost modeling or revenue modeling. And a lot of our customers actually do the revenue modeling with respect to all the usage-based, outcome-based, which is what is happening in the agentic world. I'll describe this usage and outcome-based dilemma in the following manner. One of the most foundational metric of your business, every single business, is the gross margin. You do not want your gross margin to get compromised over time. You don't want it to go down significantly. So your gross margin is basically controlled by kind of one of the defining factors of that is your cost structure, which is essentially driven by tokens or some of these kind of GPU time or something like that in the agentic world. And if you need to scale it up linearly, you really want to have your pricing being kind of somewhat connected to this kind of either token or GPU time or whatever is your cost structure metric. And hence you want to price it that way. But customers are not somebody who cares about how your cost structure is kind of built, how efficiently you're using your cost structure, like how many tokens you are internally using for creating a unit of output. Customers don't really care about it. What they care about is either of the two things. On one extreme, it is either predictability, which is like, I want to pay X amount of dollars per seat, and I know how much I'm going to be paying, and I'll do my own evaluation whether the product works or not, but I at least don't have any surprises coming into the future. Or on the other side, customers are okay in paying you for the outcome. For example, in the 11x case, I could, as a founder and CEO, I would be very happy to pay 11x for anything, like all the sales qualified leads that are coming in, right? You create infinite number of leads, I'll pay you infinite amount of money. I don't care about it. So either seat-based or like a full outcome-based. But the problem is that seat-based for you in the agentic world is more like, all you can eat buffet. You're paying a price, but then you can eat any amount of time and any amount of kind of food. But you don't know how much is the appetite of the person. Some of these hoggers will actually come and will kind of impact your gross margin. So you definitely in the agentic world cannot survive on a seat-based pricing long term. Then there comes the question of usage or the outcome-based. Fundamentally, in the outcome-based, I think if you're going in the outcome-based, all the risk is on you, whether your product works or not. And frankly speaking, a majority of the software companies can't really go and prove the ROI, like in a very objective way. And if you're going in a outcome-based pricing, the responsibility of proving ROI is actually on your head. You're almost like an insurance company which is managing this risk. Like if I'm getting 100 customers, how many of them will actually end up working? And that's all kind of a risk underwriting that you have to do yourself as the finance person of that company or whoever is designing the pricing. In the end, for you as a software builder or a software vendor, only thing that will work is the usage base. So the real question is, can you create a narrative or can you find a metric that scales with your cost structure or is actually truly usage-based, but can be sold as a outcome-based model? And that is essentially the core balance that every one of us are kind of looking for. Whosoever gets that balance will actually succeed in that pricing. Otherwise, you will kind of keep flipping around between usage and outcome-based. You want usage, customers want outcome, and you'll always have this kind of a conundrum which is going to be creating a difficulty in you setting up your pricing.
So actually, that's really fascinating. I wouldn't mind peeling back the onion on that a little bit because I've heard a lot of things here. I've heard you need to choose a metric that scales with your cost. You need to choose a metric that aligns with value. You need to choose a metric that is tangible, right? And that resonated with me too, actually, because when I was CRO of Segment, we ran a pricing and packaging project, and we sometimes price by API call, but we often price by monthly tracked user. And we wanted to move away from monthly tracked user, but we couldn't because in the MarTech industry, that is the tangible metric. So we were kind of glued to it. But now what I'm hearing is you also need to have a metric that feels like outcome, or at least is aligned with outcome. And that's like an additional layer on top of all of these different metrics and requirements that you need your metric to align to. How do you think about balancing all of those? And maybe I'd love to understand, can you give us an example of a value-based metric that also feels like it's aligned to the outcome?
Yeah, I'll take the risk. Like, I've got Connor, who is from 11x. He knows 100 times more than I know about this space. But if I was to guess as an outsider, I'm hiring a digital BDR. Now, I'm a CFO. I'm looking at the ROI. What is it that I want? I want qualified leads. I'll pay him, let's say $500, hypothetical number, $500 per every qualified lead. That's my outcome. But is he going to be able to support that? Or any business is going to be able to support that? It's very hard for him to actually guarantee $500 for a particular lead, because a lot of it actually depends on my business structure, my ability to sell, my ability to kind of convince prospects. Fundamentally, he'll be okay in kind of charging how many emails he sends out. But I'm not going to be okay in emails because I don't care about how many emails he sends out, kind of thing. Right? That's basically the core structure. Or maybe he'll kind of say how many emails or how many outreach I'm getting to qualified people, or how many maybe positive responses or some kind of responses I'm getting from the qualified people. And that is something which, will be kind of somewhat negotiable. Yeah, I'm kind of fine with that. And he's kind of going to be fine with that as well, because that's essentially very much correlated to how many emails he's actually sending, or somewhere in between. Because one extreme is like something he will definitely not agree, another extreme is something I'll not agree. So that kind of how many qualified emails are being sent out, like something like that will be more tangible, something that'll be kind of mutually agreeable to both the parties, is something that'll work out.
Got it. Connor?
Yeah, so this is exactly where we landed on. And Alok and I, we're going to go fight this out afterwards. But so yeah, I think you touched on something that's really interesting. So in the space where we're in, which is fundamentally trying to generate pipeline on behalf of a customer, so much depends on the outcome there beyond just what we can deliver, right? We can promise to enrich the data to the best of our ability using our many, many data sources. We can promise deliverability, which we do. But so much is variable depending on, like, for example, just, are we using the product to follow up to everyone who attended this event? We could do that, and that would produce a much higher result than it would if it's just like a purely cold lead. So that's sort of where we're coming from, where it's like, what we can do is we can promise that, hey, we will reach out to X amount of qualified customers per month, but the outcome is a little bit variable, and it's going to depend. It's going to depend on your sales cycle. It's going to depend on your product releases. It's going to depend on seasonality. And that's where we keep coming back to, we can price on capacity, but the value is always just in the ROI, right? Like all of us, depending on, regardless of like which business you're in, like all of us do price on outcomes, right? It's like, do people get ROI from your product or not? They're paying X amount, they're getting Y amount, right? Like fundamentally, that's sort of the business we're all in. And for us, it's like, it has to be that model where it's the inputs and the work and the capacity. And then, it's up to the customer base and us to prove that value over time.
Awesome. So Tuche, you've written about the problems with overages in usage-based pricing. On the one hand, overages can be a very powerful tool to drive upsell, to drive renewals. But on the other hand, they introduce friction into the process. And the whole point of usage-based pricing, or at least one of them, is to reduce friction, is to increase customer adoption. Like, how do you think about the need to reduce friction, give customers scalable and predictable ways to use and grow with your product, but also maintain revenue predictability on the back end for the customer, for the vendor?
So I have a question for the audience. How many of you would like your customers to adopt and expand their usage? Okay, that's the right answer.
Who didn't put their hand up?
Penalizing customers for overages is a super big irony to me. I'm like, well, this is exactly the behavior that we are trying to drive. Like, we want them to adopt, we want them to expand. And I do understand, like, you want people to commit up front, so you have predictability, they have predictability, they can, like, feel more comfortable using the product. But just, like, expiring their discounts and, like, saying, oh, you went over your limit, so now you're no longer entitled to your discount, is just blows my mind. Like, that is something that we should never be doing, because it is just against what we're trying to drive as a company. I prefer carrots over sticks in every aspect of my life, and that applies to overages. So what I recommend when I talk with portfolio companies is, okay, when people's contract, like when people go over their commits, instead of taking their discount away, just continue giving them the same amount of discount. However, they do not get to unlock the next level of discount. So, like, you want to structure your volume discounting in a way that people, as people consume more, they get better and better discounts. But in that, you don't want to, like, you kind of want them to commit upfront. I get that incentive, but just give them an incentive to commit upfront. Just saying, like, look, you're going to unlock more volume discount. We're not going to penalize you if you go over what you committed, but you were going to miss out on this. Like, create that FOMO. And I have a personal experience with this. Prior to working at A16Z, I own, like, beyond pricing. I own product operations, strategy, analytics, and one of the things that I was in charge of was negotiating our, like, current product contracts. And one of the contracts was so painful to deal with, because prior to my time, our company went over our commit and all of our discounts expired, and they tried to charge us so much money. And that eroded the trust in that relationship so much so that every single renewal was so painful. I was always told, like, go find an alternative. Go, like, we make sure that they, like, now we have, like, an unlimited contract. The company tried to do everything right after that moment, but we never got over that trauma. And I think pricing as a structure should always be, like, for long term. You want to keep that customer relationship. You want to foster that customer relationship. So just give them carrots instead of sticks is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of it is that actually when you institute overages, you either cause, like, the likelihood is that one of two outcomes is going to happen. Either the customer is going to commit to too much, in which case, if you don't allow them to roll over your commitments, which, as we heard in the previous panel, creates revenue recognition issues, then they're going to feel cheated. Right. And your champion is going to go back to their boss, and they're going to get questions as to, well, why did you buy so much and we didn't use it? Like, can you not forecast? So you're also pushing, I think, a burden of forecasting onto the customer, or the customer is going to undercommit, and then they're going to come back and they're going to need to buy more, and they're going to be in the really bizarre situation of wanting to buy more but having to pay more when they expect to pay less, and then they've got to go back to their boss again and say, well, we budgeted for this, but I've got to come up with another $1 million. And so it leads to a toxic relationship. So I've seen that firsthand. And by the way, I wish I'd had your advice, because I paid $1 million to PwC to get the fix for it. But what do you think the fix is for it?
I mean, I think the fix is, again, like, you want to give it carrots and basically structure your discounting in a way that allows people to, like, unlock those next level of discounts, deeper discounts as they consume more, but they only are entitled to it if they commit up front. If they do go over their commit, they still maintain their price that they had agreed, the unit price. So they do not get that, like, additional benefit of, like, actually consumed a lot more. So the year after, they can commit more, they can get a little bit more, and you can, like, maintain a good relationship.
So like a platform fee with a consumption schedule and multiple tiers in usage?
Multiple tiers in usage, basically. Yeah.
Right. So you still have the ability to upsell. You've
Yeah,
still got
you
the ability
still-
to get bigger commits.
Yeah.
You can balance predictability, and the customer can feel like as if they're paying less when they buy more.
Exactly. Yes. You want them to feel like they're winning.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Okay, so outcome-based pricing, we talked about that a little bit earlier. It's getting a lot of attention, especially in this new agentic AI phase that we're going through. You mentioned, look, it introduces a lot of variables and risk, especially the idea of, what success looks like, who defines success. I'm interested to understand, Connor, you probably have the most operational experience with this. How are you approaching the challenges? What advice do you give to other teams on implementing it successfully? Love to hear also then from you, Look, and lastly, Tuche.
I do think outcome-based pricing is here and will probably be really valuable for certain teams. And the reason I say that is because as we're in this like agentic AI era, you can now build these agents that do these really well-defined narrow tasks. They're still really valuable, but do them really, really well. But they aren't necessarily tasks that you would like hire a human to just sit there and do all day. So if you think about like accounts receivable, for example, like unless you're a really large org, you probably won't have like someone just dedicated on that all day. But an agent could do that really, really well, and you can really model what that's worth to you, right? So you're going to have all of these tasks like as you look across, as you look across BizOps and finance and all of these sort of platforms where they're super easy to model. But I think what I would say, and the discussions that we have internally is like as your value prop becomes more multidimensional and you're touching like different parts of the customer's value chain and you're proving value in different ways and more varied ways, I think it becomes really hard to price like that. I think a lot of teams will have success with this early on, but sort of grow out of it over time, or just have parts of their business that are outcome based with a platform fee or something like Tuche mentions. And then, as you go up market, it might transition over time. So that's my kind of read on it today.
To describe this, I'll sort of draw a little bit of historical examples. So in 1960s, Rolls-Royce launched the first power by the hour kind of a concept. So earlier, airlines used to go and buy these engines, put them in the plane and all that stuff, capex investment. But then Rolls-Royce came with this idea of, hey, we'll charge you by the hour, amount of time that the engine is actually powering the thrust of the plane, we'll charge you for that much. 1960s, somebody invented this true usage, or rather, sorry, outcome-based pricing model that actually ended up becoming the industry standard. Amazing example in the offline world. Fast forward, 18 years back, I used to work at Google. I was in the ads department. There, my firm view was that over time, world will become more of the outcome based, which was essentially measured as cost per acquisition kind of a model in the advertising world, in the marketing tech world. You all would be having some kind of a advertising spend going in your P&L. How much of that is actually CPA? I would say probably zero, maybe 2%, 5%, something like that. Ended up being that almost entire spend was actually CPC, which was actually usage equivalent in the advertising world, not the outcome equivalent of the advertising world. Why did the world, in a world of advertising, not move to an outcome base where every single person wanted full visibility, full tracking, full ROI for the marketing dollar that is being spent? The reason was the attribution problem. The reason was everyone had a different definition of outcome. Everyone had a different definition of acquisition. And companies like Google didn't have visibility into what exactly is the outcome, because you would not allow enough visibility to Google, because otherwise they'll jack up their prices. Those concerns will prevent you from doing this kind of giving Google enough visibility. So in that digital example, outcome-based pricing actually did not work out. Now the question is, in the agentic world, which story will play out? Whether it will be Rolls-Royce's story or the advertising story. My bet is that if your product can truly deliver outcome, you will actually kill the entire competitive landscape. You will end up being the monopoly of that market. You will be able to price based on the outcome. But I would say that market will be very niche. Maybe 5-10% of the players will be able to reach outcome-based pricing. Most of the other players will end up remaining somewhere in the usage-based pricing world. They will call themselves outcome-based, which will be more of the sales story, which will be more of convincing the customers. But true billing story will actually always remain some kind of usage base, because 90% of the softwares can't actually truly prove outcome. And that is one thing which is coming out very clearly when I talk to so many different CFOs of variety of business models.
So I was recently at a pricing conference, and outcome-based pricing was all people wanted to talk about. And I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I'm not going to bore you with all of them. But I guess like a few things, like I think it's not a new concept. Finance had this for the longest time. Like when you swipe your credit card, you pay a transaction fee that you don't see, but the merchants pay on your behalf because they get their money. It's a very direct outcome, customer outcome. So they can be like, okay, I'm going to take a 3% of that. In AI, in SaaS, it's a little bit, the outcome for the customer is a little bit more like removed. It's a little bit more difficult to determine. That's why I like product outcomes. Like Connor, you said, it's a lot more tangible. We want that tangibility, understandability, able to track, kind of like conceptualize. So I do like product outcomes, definitely find them a lot more practical for our purposes. Another thing, this is not an original thought. I heard this again at this conference, which I thought was pretty interesting. With outcome-based pricing, people are finding adoption to be easy because companies are more willing to be trustful. Like you're like, oh, like I'm putting skin in the game. We're gonna do this together. So here's my product, and we're gonna like the outcome, whatever what the outcome is, we're gonna split it. So you're putting that your trust in your own products so that people follow that. However, renewals become a little bit more tricky. Again, this is not for everyone, but so people are finding it difficult to predict, so they're having a harder time to renew. And with that, one of the advice that I heard about it, which I thought was interesting, was when you're giving discounts, ask for a business audit every 6 months so you can show that your product had all of the outcomes that were intended. So you can just be like, actually, look, like we made you this much money. So, remember this at renewal, essentially. So that's another thought that I heard. And the third thing that I heard, which I thought was interesting, and I like it got me thinking, is only use outcome-based pricing when there is high attribution and high autonomy. So like the product is highly autonomous. It can do all the things on its own, similar to your product at 11x, and high attribution. So you can attribute the outcome to the product. So those are generally the things that I've been hearing the industry is talking about. But one thing that I have to say, this is a very new concept for us, for SaaS people, for AI folks, and things change pretty rapidly. So next year we might be talking about something else. But I do think that it's probably here to stay for the foreseeable future. I think it's worth thinking through.
Excellent. Thank you, panel. Round of applause for our panel, please. Thank you.